Brianne Showman with Get Your Fix Physical Therapy and Performance. Today I have some fun facts for you about the big toe, specifically how the big toe relates to the glute. So, um, we a lot of times we don't really think about what that foot's doing when it's on the ground, what the big toe is doing on the ground, and ultimately we shouldn't have to think about this, but it's something our body should know how to do. Unfortunately, it's just not. And I'm going to break it down for you on why this is so important to actually learn. So, when that foot is on the ground, like a lot of times, think about like squats, deadlifts. If you're ever doing anything like that at the gym, do you ever really pay attention to where your foot is? Or if you do you pay that much attention to what that big toe is doing? My guess is probably not, since most people I talk to don't. But when that big toe is on the ground, when you're making some good contact with the ground and activating it by pushing it down a little bit, that automatically sends signals to the glute that it needs to fire. It also puts that leg in better alignment just by that big toe. So when you're doing anything at the gym, standing, that sort of thing, if that toe knows it needs to push down into that ground a little bit, we automatically activate that glute a little bit better. So a lot of times when we hear someone tell us like your glutes aren't firing, they aren't activating, glute amnesia we hear thrown around sometimes. A lot of times if we teach that big toe how to work, it automatically turns that glute on. So it's a simple little fix. And I don't even want to say trick because it's ultimately just how the body works. But it is kind of a little trick on getting that glute to fire better. Now, when it comes to walking and running, a lot of us know now that we need glute activation. The question is, how do we make that happen? And no, it's not by laying on the ground, doing clamshells and leg raises and all that stuff. Yes, that gets the glutes fire, but it doesn't really teach it how to fire when you're actually moving around. So, when you're walking, your leg gets behind you. Ultimately, we need to be on that big toe. When you're running, the same thing happens. That leg is behind you. We push off, getting on that big toe. Why is that important? Because that extension of the big toe, essentially that coming backwards, helps that glute to fire, teaches it that it needs to be more active, more contracted. So if we don't get into that big toe extension like we need to, we don't get as good of activation here. Why is that relevant to how you run? Because if you are someone who runs on the outside of your foot and don't really get to that big toe, you're gonna have trouble getting that glute to activate. If you are someone who overpronates, we do need to pronate, but if you overpronate or do any sort of rolling in this way, because we're for a number of reasons, then you're almost pushing off this side of your foot and you're not getting into that extension. So once again, we're not getting that glute activation. So issues like bunions, lacking ankle range of motion, things like that, anything that doesn't allow us to really get in that position does not allow our glute to fire like it needs to. So how do we get that glute to fire like we need to? We learn how to use that big toe better, both from a dexterity standpoint and from a mobility standpoint. So that's my fun fact for you for today. Questions, comments, post them below, and have an awesome day.